Having had success here the first week and a completely non-eventful beginning to my second week, I decided to return to the stand where we got our doe on the previous Tuesday, and once again we have deer movement really early, but as it's usually been with this spot, it's all young deer. And despite the fact that these aren't deer that we're actually having any interest in shooting, it's always a lot better to actually be able to see deer while you're hunting. It definitely improves the mentality, so even though we're not looking at anything that we'd actually shoot, I can still appreciate actually having deer on the field early. One of the major positives from this hunt was getting to see these turkeys work their way onto the field. These are some quality toms, and I'm sitting here in my tree stand thinking, our fall turkey season starts in 3 weeks, and if these guys continue feeding onto the field like this, I'm going to have to take a day and try to get one of these guys. Even if it is just the fall season and we're not going to get to see them in full strut and get to experience all the gobbling and the calling, it would still be really fun to get one of these on film. But of course, as they fed off, it was back to watching deer for the rest of the evening, and once again, as the story has gone with this spot over and over, we have young deer really early, and mature deer waiting till absolute last light, but it's quite crazy to watch how these animals adapt. I mean, just a couple of weeks ago, even the mature deer were on this field with a lot of light left, and now they're moving at the absolute last minute, and in this case, they were also too far away. But just getting to actually see the impact of what hunting pressure is applied through archery season is kind of cool, and it also shows you just how quickly these guys can adapt. As I geared up for my next hunt, I decided to go to a spot that I hadn't been so far this year, and it's an area where I know there's a lot of deer and I know they like to move early. It's kind of an area they seem to have as a safe haven. But I didn't do any sort of pre-hunt interview for this one. There were 2 fawns on the field when I got there and I decided to keep it quiet, and quite quickly we also had a young doe, and I wanted to get a deer on film with a lot of light because the last one was quite dark. So I decided if I could get a shot at this one, I was going to try it. And I managed to hit the ground behind her. And initially when this happened, I thought she ducked my arrow, but looking at it a little more closely, I definitely just shot over her. I think I ranged her at 24 yards, and my best guess is that I aimed a little too high with my 20-yard pin, and I think she probably did work a few yards closer to me. But fortunately it was a clean miss, no wounded animals to deal with, and quite quickly they were right back on the field. They were not spooked badly by that at all. That said, with the deer hitting the field so quickly again, I didn't get any opportunity to review the footage on the camera. I didn't want all that extra movement, so I still thought she ducked my arrow, which would come into play a little bit later, but quite quickly there were a lot more deer on the field. I mentioned that thinking the doe ducked my arrow would come into play later, and this is where. Very quickly she was back into 20 yards again, and she seemed quite calm, but the deer were particularly jumpy on this evening, and I thought with her already having ducked the arrow once, it would probably happen again. Knowing what I know now, I think I could have made that shot without a problem, but I decided to be safe. There were other does on the field, so I thought I'd just wait it out and see if one of those would come into range. Unfortunately, what I didn't know was while I was trying to get the camera positioned on these does, another doe had spooked from down below me, and whatever spooked her sent her right to me, and I got busted. I had actually heard her snort initially when she spooked. I just hadn't realized she actually ran towards me, so I was getting the camera moved around into position to get a shot on these does, and of course she was staring right at me as I did it. So of course she decided to take the whole field with her, and they all started moving off, but most of them are still quite calm. They're kind of feeding as they leave, none of their tails are up, so I don't think this spot is ruined. I definitely need to be a little more careful though when I'm in here again, but my plan was to just leave. I thought once they sort of left the field, I was going to go grab my arrow and I was going to get out of there and not risk blowing the spot out anymore. But before I could even do that, they were back on the field. Clearly they weren't spooked too badly, but I wasn't going to risk any shots. They definitely were jumpy to begin with. Now after getting spooked away from that tree, I didn't want to risk it. So at this point it was just filming deer, waiting till dark, and then trying to get out of there as quietly as possible.
Well, that's obviously not how that was meant to go, but man, what a weird hunt. There were so many deer, so many sets of eyes to try to avoid. I think only that one doe actually saw us, that one that, whatever happened, she spooked from down at the apple tree and came up at us. I don't know what got her up there, but I think we were going to get a shot. I think had she not busted us, I don't think those others knew we were there. I don't know what had them so jumpy tonight. Like, we're still pretty early season. They shouldn't be too badly spooked, but I don't know. All I know now is we're gonna stay out of there a while, cause that's gonna be a good spot. Once those does go in heat, probably bucks come with them, and as long as they keep feeding out on that field, things could get real interesting. That corner back there, because of the hill, they feel pretty safe, I think, coming out kind of early, so we'll see. But for now, we're gonna find another spot the rest of the week. Well, it's Friday, October 18th, and our muzzleloader season starts tomorrow, so hopefully we can get our second doe tag filled tonight. Won't even need to use it. Muzzleloader is doe only here, so we'll see. We're in a good spot. It's still kind of cool out. This is where we killed the first doe, and I know there's other mature does in this area. Usually they're coming out just after dark, so hopefully with this little bit of cooler weather, calmer conditions, might be able to get a shot and just focus on bucks the rest of the year.
Finally, we get to see something different from this stand, and initially I thought it was a big doe moving onto the field with a lot of light left, but as I got to looking, it's actually a really small spike, and it was quite far away. I couldn't tell for sure, but I kind of wonder if this is an antlered doe. It's really small, but regardless with those spikes, that's not a deer that we can take, so we just get to watch it and wonder what's actually going on there. But we did actually get to see a little more antlers, the same young buck we saw last week, and it's good to see he's frequenting this field. As I mentioned last week, I want to see what he grows into as he ages. I think he has a lot of potential, but again, he's not something that can actually help us right now. And as they do, mature does coming onto the field, absolute last light, and a little too far away.
that's pretty much a wrap on that, I think. Probably like 10 yards closer I'd have tried him, but 45 yards, that's a little far when it's a few minutes before the end of legal light, so it's a good sign they actually, they did come out, before legal light. Most of these mature does haven't been, so I'll be back in here with a muzzleloader probably in a few days and see if we can get that second doe tag filled.
I guess there's a reason they call it hunting and not shopping. Despite the shot that we did get, I wasn't able to connect, and fortunately it was just a clean miss and we don't have a wounded animal on our hands. But even though we didn't add any meat to the freezer this week, it was still a really fun week. We got some really cool deer footage, and I've just been really enjoying self-filming. One of the aspects I didn't see coming, watching last week's video and even this week's where we don't connect on a deer, it's really, really cool to be able to go back to that moment and just have everything right there in front of me again. So if there's anything I'll say before we wrap this video up, if you've ever considered self-filming, I absolutely recommend it. It's so fun. There's a lot of learning, there's a lot of stuff that's involved, but it's really rewarding, and again, just being able to go back to that moment and relive it, that's a priceless thing in my mind. There's limited amount of months we get to do this every year, and getting to have that sort of experience saved via a camera is really cool. So we have all this cool deer footage. I wanted to let some of that roll as I talked about that, and again, I really think this may be my favorite part of Meat Hunters. As much as I like to edit the content, put it all together, and get to interact with some of you guys through the Discord and all of that stuff, I really, really think there's something to be said about reliving the moment through these videos. So, as I mentioned, if you want to self-film, I really recommend it. It is really, really different, and it's a fun way to hunt. I think I'll leave it at that. So, next week is muzzleloader season. Hopefully we can get that second doe tag filled. Muzzleloader is doe only here in PA, so no bucks. I want to get the tag filled as soon as possible and get on 2 bucks, but we'll see. For now, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next week.